read that book, I said, oh my gosh, this is it. And when that plane hit Asmara Airport, I was like, I am finally here in the motherland. I cannot believe it. Just absolutely gorgeous. I had a wonderful time. It was very, very peaceful. People thought I was from there. Aren't you from here? I'm like, no, I'm not from here. What about your parents? No, they're not from there either. Hey, well, what about your grandparents? No, they're not from there. That really, really felt good. It made me feel welcome. People welcomed me with open arms. It was fantastic.
RDC.
Yes, the RDC. Yes. When I went in there, it wasn't like a huge, intimidating building. But the building that was there, when I went inside, I was just blown away by the amount of information that was there available, especially on my topic, and also how organized it was and how dedicated the staff at the RDC was in terms of making sure that the information at the research and documentation was in tip-top condition, was available to reseachers. I'm a big city girl. Whenever, I'm walking, my pace is just very, very fast. People are like, well, where are you going? Slow down. And I had to learn to really slow down and really adapt to the social environment in Asmara. People taking time for each other. And people wanting to really sit down and find out what's going on. How are you doing? Why don't you sit down and have cappuccino with me? And they wouldn't dare allow me to pay. Invite me over for lunch, for coffee, just to chill. And that was really, really valuable. And I really learned to really value and cherish relationships. I learned that in Eritrea, because in the West, it's like, go, 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 go. And I'll catch up with you later if I catch up with you. I felt so safe. Before I went there, I'd read articles on Eritrea, and they were talking about in those articles how safe it was and how, even as a woman, you could walk down a dark street, a dark alley, and no one would say anything. And so when I got there, I tried it. And I did it several times. And no one bothered me, felt, totally safe there.
Hello, Air Express viewers. My name is Isaias Woldemariam. We have a special guest for this program. We have Dr. Nicole Saulsberry, and you are for a treat. And so I'd like to introduce Dr. Nicole Saulsberry. Would you tell us about yourself briefly, Nicole?
Salam. Shemaine Nicole Denise Saulsberry, EU. Ane Cobb, Chicago, Illinois. Tariq Atseni Ab University of Illinois at Urbana-Champaign. Kumawun, Stanford University. But 1994, Tigrinya, Nikamahar, Nab Ertra, Kudku, Mimharai, to Cabo Orasir, Abismara, Bahazbel, Gizie, Ahalafku, Deheriu, of 1996, Murmur, Kagabar, Timilesku, Bazaba, Woldeab Woldemariam. In 1998, Cap Ertra with Saiku, Ab London, Roman Murmur, Dema Gabare, Deheriu, Nab California, Timilesi, but 2001, Amelkit, Wadaiku, Demalti, Kimles, Bahankewuti, Ie, Zitzabe, Ikanyele. Hi, everyone. Thank you so much, Isaias, for inviting me for this interview, and I am excited. It's been a while, so I'm really excited to talk about Eritrea. My name is Nicole Saulsberry, and I'm originally from Chicago, Illinois. I went to the University of Illinois at Urbana-Champaign. I graduated in 1993 with a bachelor's and double major, actually, in history and anthropology. And then I went to Stanford University and got my master's and doctorate in African history with an emphasis on Eritrea. And let's see, how did I get involved with Eritrea? Well, let's take a step back. I got involved in studying African history because for so long I had been studying European history, American history, and I wanted to go back to the source, the true source, which is African history. And when I got to, I wanted to go get my PhD because I loved history, and I had a teacher in high school. Her name was Paula Etheridge, who taught history like a soap opera. And so you know how you soap operas can hook you in, and you want to know the storyline every day. And so that's what got me involved in history. And so when I got to grad school, I said, okay, I'm going to do African history. In terms of specialization, I wanted to do South Africa. That was my first choice. And I wanted to do something related to children and resistance. What draws me to resistance movements and colonial movements is to find out, and just really read about how people survive, adapt, and thrive under the most dire circumstances, under the most dangerous and challenging circumstances. So I wanted to focus on that. But then again, I thought about it and I was like, okay, South Africa is a little bit, over-researched. And so I thought about something in West Africa. And I was like, West Africa, another, overly, researched area as well. And so I decided, okay, well, let me try Ethiopia. I had an Ethiopian professor in undergrad, and I took some of his courses. His name was Professor Bahru Zodeh, and he wrote a book entitled The History of Ethiopia. And so I was like, okay, let me check in with my advisor, whose name was Connell Jackson. And at the time when I broached the topic to him, he said, okay, Ethiopia is not bad, but why don't you choose Eritrea since it's a new country? And I was like, you know what, Eritrea, that name sounds familiar. And so, I hearkened it into the fact that Professor Zodeh taught about Ethiopia and he mentioned Eritrea. So I was like, okay, well, let me, do a lit review and see how much literature is out there. The first book I read about Eritrea was Women in the Eritrean Revolution, and it was by Amrit Wilson. And when I read that book, I said, oh my gosh, this is it. And this was back in 93, 94. And so I said, okay, this is the place where I need to be. And at that
was that during when you were doing the master's or PhD program?
Master's.
You were in the master's program when, okay.
Yeah, because in 94, I went to Eritrea for the first time. It was during the summer of 1994, and I did the language training. I was on a foreign language and area studies fellowship, the FLAS fellowship. And so that was my first time, not overseas, because I had been to the islands before as a little girl, but in terms of doing something major, a trip to Africa, that was my first time. I arrived, I think it was in June 1994. And when that plane hit Asmara Airport, I was like, I am finally here in the motherland. I cannot believe it. And I was just so overjoyed. Here I am, and an African American doing research, wanting to do research in Africa at the time, Africa's newest country. It was very exhilarating. It was very exciting because it was very fresh. It was very new. It wasn't as well researched as other areas on the continent, like Ghana, Senegal, Nigeria, South Africa, Zimbabwe, you name it. And so I remember, actually, I met you before I went. Connell Jackson, my advisor, said, oh, there's an Eritrean gentleman, his name is Isaias Tesfamariam at Hoover, you should meet him. And so that's how we met. And so I remember taking a trip to the White Hotel, which is smack dab up against the government's palace. And so I stayed there. And I met Atto Ogbai. I think it was Ogbai Johannes, who was with this teachers training college in the capital city. And he introduced me to Cabo Orase, who was my Tigrinya teacher. And he was excellent. And this guy, oh my gosh, he was multilingual. He knew Tigrinya, he knew Italian, he knew English, he knew Arabic. So he knew it all. And so he, really taught me the language in terms of drawing the characters, making the appropriate pronunciations, writing sentences, speaking. It was a wonderful opportunity. And so I delved into it. Now there were times when, I would get shy around certain people. And so I would revert back to English, but I had to really, break out of that because I was there on a language fellowship. I was there to learn the language. And so I wanted to do everything that I could, not just speak language, but know how to write the characters, know how to pronounce the characters, know how to formulate sentences, and know how to speak. Maybe not on like a native level, but be able to be conversational. That's what really.
Nicole, just to clarify for people, for example, this program, you were there for how long? Were you supposed to be there to learn the language? So what was the purpose of this program?
Sure. The Foreign Language and Area Studies Fellowship is there for you to become proficient in the native language, which was Tigrinya. And so I was there during the whole summer from June to August. And so, August, I came back to California, to Stanford University. And then I continued my studies. And so it was great. And so I completed my master's. But while I was there, I was able to, make connections to a lot of Eritreans from overseas, Eritreans who, who are, natives of Eritrea, who are, in the country, just people from all over. And so I really enjoyed the experience. The city was just absolutely gorgeous. I had a wonderful time. It was very, very peaceful. People thought I was from there. So I was like, they were like, aren't you from here? I'm like, no, I'm not from here. What about your parents? No, they're not from there either. They're from Chicago. My dad's from Louisiana. Okay, well, what about your grandparents? No, they're not from there, And so that really, really felt good. It made me feel welcome. People welcomed me with open arms. It was fantastic. So I made my way back to in August, back to campus at Stanford. And then I, took the coursework, got my master's, did the oral examinations. And then I had to, in the meantime, at the same time, actually apply for fellowship to get money for my dissertation. And so I had to have a dissertation topic. And so I said, okay, well, what am I going to write on? I don't know what I'm going to write on. And it was during that time, it was in 1995. I was on that Eritrean, I guess, email list called Dahai. I, received this message in 1995 talking about Woldeab Woldemariam, that he had passed. And I was like, okay, well, who is this guy? And so I started reading the emails about him. And I said, oh my gosh, this is somebody who was very, very prominent. You're talking about the father of Eritrea, the father of Tigrinya. He wrote articles. He was a journalist. He was a prominent teacher. And so, okay, I hadn't read any books about him or anything like that. And so I said, well, why don't I write something about him? And so I posed the issue with my advisor, and he said, this is the way to go. I think this would be a great dissertation topic. And so I put in the application for Fulbright. There's the Fulbright DOE, Department of Education, and then the Fulbright IIE, and that was what I had. And so I put in my.
Is that the State Department one, or?
Yes, State Department, IIE, yes. Mm-hmm. And so I put in my proposal to both of them, and I came back with the IIE, Fulbright IE, sponsored by the United States Information Agency at the time. And so I was just really, really overjoyed. I was like, okay, I am on my way to Eritrea to write a biography on Woldeab Woldemariam. You know, I was very, very excited at the time because if, you know, I had to take a step back and look at all of the people, all the students worldwide who are applying to various different countries for the Fulbright. And Eritrea was not competitive. So it was a win-win situation. It had at that time a novel dissertation topic, and the country, it wasn't competitive at all in terms of hordes of people applying for, you know, dissertation, Fulbright fellowships to do research in Eritrea, unlike places like South Africa, Ghana, Senegal. So it was a win-win situation for me. And
so, sorry, do you know how many were applied when you applied there? I mean, when you said advantage, did they tell you, or you would?
I could probably count them on one hand.
Okay.
Maybe count them on several fingers on one hand.
Yeah,
maybe.
yeah. I mean, because as you know, in academia, when you know certain subjects come up, a certain country or area would be prominent for a certain period of time. At one point was, like you mentioned earlier, South Africa was very prominent. At one point, Rwanda was very prominent.
Yeah.
You know, so it goes on with the current situation and so forth. So actually, maybe current situation really drives the interest. So the number of people that you mentioned also was true. So by the time you applied for that, Eritrea was new, 93 to 95, which is right. Referendum was held in 93. So you were right at the time.
Yeah.
So let me ask you before and then I'll let you continue. But so you started as, the book that got you interested was Eritrean Women, right? The Eritrean fighter women. And when during 1995 in the Dahai dialogue or in the Dahai conversations, digitally, Abu Woldab's funeral or death, said, okay, maybe I need to look into that. And nobody wrote about that. One of the fathers of Eritrean nationalism. Then it got you interested, right? And so you applied to write about Woldeab Woldemariam. So that was from the language course that you took, like 3 months. That was 2 years later, right? Are we talking about? Just
I went back.
1995.
And then I went back for the dissertation research in November 96.
96, okay. So you got the application approved in 95, and you went back in 96. November.
Yeah, 95, 96. Yeah.
Yeah, 95. So the fellowship is how long?
The fellowship was for actually 10 months, but yeah, since I needed extra time to do, for the research, I applied for an extension and they gave it to me.
Okay. So if you can take us now, since this is going to take us to your actual dissertation. So could you tell us how the process, I mean, not the process of the application, but how you got there, the people you met there, how you did the research, that kind of thing.
Okay. In terms of me being I got the Fulbright dissertation, but I had to get research clearance. And the only way for me to get research clearance to do research in Eritrea was for me to teach at the University of Asmara. So I was a lecturer as well. And I agreed to teach, 2 courses, for 2 semesters, and they were both on African history. And so I taught at the University of Asmara part-time. These were mainly ex-fighters who worked for the Ministry of Information. And so that's how I got my research clearance in the country. And when I got there, I was able to, I mainly did all my research at the Research and Documentation Center.
RDC.
Yes, the RDC. Yes. Or the Ma'akel Murmurin Sinadan.
Yeah.
See, I haven't forgotten the name.
Yes, I know you did.
So, when I went in there, it wasn't like a huge intimidating building, but the building that was there, when I went inside, I was just blown away by the amount of information, that was there available, especially on my topic, and also how organized it was and how dedicated the staff at the RDC was in terms of making sure that the information at the research and documentation was in tip-top condition, was available to researchers, both in Eritrea and foreigners coming from abroad. It was really, really impressive, and how willing they were to help me complete my research. And so my research assistant was, her name was Adiem Warete, and she was an interpreter for other foreigners as well. So she was right there by my side. And so every day, I mean, it was just like going to work. You know, I had an outline of what I wanted to address in my dissertation, what I wanted to cover. And so when I got to the RDC and spoke to the director at the RDC, his name was, I think, at Kuflum, and then later on, Azeb Tolde.
Azeb Tolde.
And I said, give me all you got with respect to Woldeab Woldemariam. And they had all of these cassette tapes of interviews that he had given throughout the years, spanning from covering his childhood, the Italian colonialism, what he did in the 40s, the 50s, his role as a teacher, all of that, his what he did during the later years, during the Eritrean struggle. They had it all. Not only did they have that, but they had documents from the Italian period, as well as, the British administration during the 50s, the 40s and 50s. And that was very, very crucial. I was just swimming in stuff. And so every day I would go there, except during the weekends when they were closed. And it was just like a job, regular job. So I would, set aside, 8 hours and scour those archives. And so it took a while. It's just, routine work of having Adiem Warete, my research assistant, by my side, translating the tapes for me. And so we would have to have a tape recorder. So we would go through the interviews, and then I would write them down, transcribe them on cards. And so,
by the way, you still have, right?
Yes, I do.
I know.
Yes. I would transcribe those interviews on cards, and that's what it took. And so, that was pretty much my day-to-day life. Now, in terms of going out and meeting people, that's what I did as well. I traveled throughout the country, and because I wanted to get the full experience. I mean, this is a new country, that's trying to, really set itself up on the world stage in the early 90s. And so I wanted to soak every bit of that experience in. And I just loved it. I loved the pace of the country in terms of, because, I'm a big city girl. And so whenever, I'm walking, my pace is just very, very fast. Yeah. And
your talking is fast too.
Exactly. And so it's like, people are like, well, where are you going? Slow down. And so, I had to learn to really slow down and really adapt to the social environment in Asmara. People taking time for each other, and people wanting to really sit down and find out what's going on. How are you doing? Why don't you sit down and have cappuccino with me? And they wouldn't dare allow me to pay. And they would not dare, invite me over for lunch, for coffee, just to chill. And that was really, really valuable. And I really learned to really value and cherish relationships. And that's what, I learned that in Eritrea, because in the West, it's like, go, 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 go. and I'll catch up with you later if I catch up with you, you know. And so that I really learned that to really make time for people. And it's about cultivating relationships and not just, you know, getting from people, you know, what you can all the time. So that was my experience in Eritrea. In terms of interviewing people, what I did was I had like a little method. All of the names of Woldeab Woldemariam's cohorts that he mentioned in the tapes, I would write them down. So I had a running list of everybody. And so I went to one of his cohorts that was still alive at that time. His name was Gebra Mikhail Bisrat. And so I said, look, here's a list of all of Woldeab Woldemariam's cohorts. Do you know any of them? And it was like maybe a list of maybe 50 people. And he took that list and he said, okay, so-and-so dead, so-and-so dead, so-and-so dead, so-and-so dead, dead, overseas, dead. I was like, what?
All 50, yeah.
Yeah. And so, you know, I just had to interview other people and make inroads and ask around. I said, okay, well, who knew Woldeab? Who, you know, knew about him, who was, I guess, in not from his generation, but from the younger generation. And so that's how I was able to get to interview more people. Because if I were just relied on, you know, people from his generation, I would be out of luck. So I was able to interview not only Gebra Mikhail Bisrat, but Johannes Tsagai, who was, I guess, 20 years younger than he was. And so he was he was, I guess, Woldeab's closest, or one of his closest cohorts. And he was an attorney at the time, and he had his own like little practice on Independence Avenue I think it was on the second floor. And so, you know, him, Gebra Mikhail Bisrat, and maybe a smattering of other people from his generation, but a lot of them were, you know, from Isaias Afwerki's generation, who knew him. And so I can't, you know, overlook, I met his family.
Yeah, I was going to ask you that. Okay.
Yes, I was able to meet his wife, Abra Shedego, and I met Tamrat Woldeab. I didn't get a chance to meet Alula Woldeab, but I met another one of his daughters. Her name escapes me. I can't remember her name, but they were gracious enough to welcome me into their home. And so that was, it was great. But I have to, let's see, I think I interviewed, I can't remember if I interviewed Abra Shedego or what, but I wanted to or approach my interaction with his family very, very cautiously, because I didn't want to rush in as this Westerner, you know, just wanting to just, you know, take from them and just go for the gusto and just say, okay, tell me about your father. Tell me about your husband. I wanted to establish a relationship with them. And I don't regret doing that, but I think I could have pushed for more information about him from them that I didn't get. And so that was a mistake on my part. I was just so cautious about not being as intrusive. You know what I mean? You know, that was a lesson learned there. But the information, like I said, that I received in Eritrea was just really overwhelming. They were very well organized, and they were very well receptive to the idea of Woldeab Woldemariam. And in looking at the research and reviewing actually my dissertation, which I did before, like an hour before I jumped on this call, what really impressed me about Woldeab Woldemariam is that he had such concern for the youth. His youth was his main target because they were the future. And so in, looking at the data and looking at the documents, he would, for example, reference the Bible a lot. And he thought that the Bible was not only a religious text, but a political text as well. And how he used his Christian faith to further social justice in Eritrea and amongst Eritreans. Not only was did he use the Bible and use his faith to propagate freedom and liberation for Eritreans, he was very, very proud to be an Eritrean. He was a father of Tigrinya. I mean, this, alphabet Hehu, making sure, he was a teacher and making sure that, Eritreans not only, knew about the language and the history, but he was very much concerned about how he taught it. When I was, because when you hear about African leaders and revolutionaries and what have you, in terms of their indoctrination, you hear about them learning about Marxism, Leninism, and all these high-minded philosophies, political ideologies, and what have you. When I read information and research about Woldeab Woldemariam and his articles that he wrote, a lot of them were children's stories. And they were talking about like almost childlike things. I was like, oh my gosh, this is kind of like, I've never seen this before. I was expecting something more, I guess, high-minded coming from the father of Eritrea. I mean, he's serving as a source of inspiration to Eritreans on down the line. But yet he is, writing articles about, children's stories and how to, be moral and how to, be obedient to your parents and, et cetera, et cetera. So he had a different avenue in terms of bringing people together, or bringing the national sentiment of being Eritrean to the highest level, and that was capturing the minds and the hearts of the youth. And that was very interesting. It was very different from what I had been studying, from other, African revolutionaries. That was very, very enlightening and eye-opening. Articles on honor, freedom, traditional values, and what it's going to take for Eritreans to win their independence. It's going to take solidarity, not sectarianism. And that was needed at that time, because during the British administration, that was a time, the Italians lost. They lost all of their colonies. Now the question of Eritrea and the UN popped up. What are we going to do with Eritrea in the future? The British were not going to be there forever. So that's where the conversations about, whether Eritrea should be with Ethiopia, whether it should be partially with Ethiopia, partially with the Sudan, whether it should be independent. That was the time when all these issues started bubbling up. And so
character becomes very important.
Yeah, it's very, very important.
Yeah. So a couple of things, let me ask you. You mentioned the Cabo Ares, for example. And he had compiled a book in 1995, I think. It's about Woldeab Woldemariam sayings, the sayings of Woldeab Woldemariam in a book. So did he have any impact on you when he was teaching you Tigrinya and stuff? Did he have any impact on you or later? Because he taught you in 93, but in 95, did you meet him? Was he still in contact with the Cabo Ares in 95? Because he had written this, the sayings or the sayings of Woldeab Woldemariam, or the writings of Woldeab Woldemariam.
Yeah. Now, let's see. After 1994, which was in 1994, I went to Eritrea and I was taught by Tukabo. Now, when I went back in 96, I didn't see him again.
I see.
After 94.
I see.
So, But in terms of the language, yeah, of course, he really had an impact on me. He gave me that foundation for the language so that I could be able to like read the language and understand what was, being said.
Yeah, because he had written 95. He had written the writings or the sayings of
the articles.
the articles that the Tigrinya book. So that, but you know about it, right? You know about that.
Yeah, and actually, a gentleman by the name of he was an ex-fighter, Mana Teklamariam. He translated that book for me, the list of articles.
Oh, okay. So you use some of it in there. Okay, good. And then the other person you mentioned, Gabra Mikael Basrat, he was the father of Yamana Baria, the singer.
Oh, yeah, I know. He was Yamana Baria was the Eritrean Michael Jackson. He told me that.
No, actually, Michael Jackson is the Yamana Baria of the U.S.
Okay. Okay, I'll take that.
Yeah, I was just kidding. Yeah, but so okay, good. You know that, right? Okay.
Yes. Mm-hmm.
And then the other thing, since you mentioned RDC and how they were organized and stuff like that, since I work with them and I still work with them, the way it's organized is kind of like the de facto National Archives, but it has compiled, as you know, the EPLF was, while they were fighting, they were still compiling documents and so forth, and they're moving the archives from place to place depending on the war situation, right? There was RISE, which is the information center established in the West in Italy, and then the US branch and so forth. So they had collected materials and so forth also, right? And then there were materials that was left by the Derg. By the time the Derg was defeated, didn't have to, they left the stuff intact. So all of that is compiled into a combination of all of that is into one center. So as you know, they meticulously recorded all of that, digitized some of them. So that was why you had the Italian period, the Ethiopian period, and the Derg, the Haile Selassie time, the British period, and so forth, and the others. So that's why it's kept and then rigorously defended, because it's part of the history. So the RDC has an important role. So having the interview of Dr. Woldeab and others with pictures. I mean, there are thousands of pictures and so forth, and then also others have given materials to them, like Richard Greenfield has given, I forgot, 7 tons of materials that he had collected over 40 years, and other individual, people have collected material. So you're right. So when the word you use, like I was swimming, is I can visually picture it because it's so much material. So it could be a lot of, So I just want to elaborate that on people so they can understand. When you were there for 2 years, were you safe there? You felt safe? You mentioned how the people treated you and all that. And were there other researchers who were there? We go there and then we go to.
Yes, there I felt so safe. People, before I went there, I'd read articles on Eritrea, and they were talking about in those articles how safe it was, and how, even as a woman, you could walk down a dark street, a dark alley, and no one would say anything. And so when I got there, I tried it and I did it several times, and no one bothered me. So I felt, totally safe there. So I was, they had no issues about my security while I was there in 94. And when I went back for my research from 96 to 98. When I was there, I met researchers from all over. I met this one researcher from Nigeria. His name was Femi Akinola. And he got his doctorate in economic history from London School of Economics and Political Science. And I also met Mayor Eric Garcetti. And he was at the time a graduate student at the London School of Economics and Political Science as well. And he was doing research at the Research and Documentation Center, along with another researcher by the name of Julia Barrera from Northwestern University. And she was focusing on, I think she was focusing on Eritrean women. So I met, a lot of several researchers just working on a variety of topics. And so we were able to, share information. And actually it was Eric Garcetti who gave me a couple of several documents about Woldeab from the archives in Washington, D.C. And he gave them to me. And they were, very crucial. It was documents from the State Department mentioning Woldeab Woldemariam. So it wasn't like a whole stack or anything, but they were very crucial pieces of information that went well in the dissertation. So that was, there was some camaraderie there with, the researchers at the RDC. So we were at ground level with, in terms of being in a place, being in a country that, was making history and all of that, all of the things that went with that. And so that was wonderful. And it was also wonderful for me to be able to venture out of the city, like going to Kutun, going to Dekamhare, going to Masawa, everything in between. So just going out, seeing the countryside, seeing the differences in people and differences in geography, landscape. It was just wonderful. And then, of course, when I went to the Red Sea, oh, that was just beautiful. I mean, it was just amazing, absolutely amazing. Differences in witnessing the differences in climate. Just getting out, being able to enjoy the country, enjoy the experience, because I didn't know if I was ever going to do this again. So I made sure that I was going to, take advantage of every opportunity that I had in Eritrea to network with Eritreans, with non-Eritreans, to take advantage of every experience, to take advantage of just a whole lot of other stuff, just in general. So I was glad I was able to do that, not only just in 1994, but just from 1996 to 98. And see, from 96 to 98, I never left the country. So I never went back to the US for a break or anything like that. I stayed there. And so I was adamant on staying there and getting the work done and not going back and forth. So, so yeah, that was pretty much my, experience.
So what did your weekend look like? Because you mentioned that it's like work, you're RDC. So how about your weekend? If you're
sure. Weekend, sometimes I would hang out with people from the US, American expats, or sometimes I would hang out with Eritreans coming back home from abroad, especially during the summertime. So a lot of them were my age. And so I met Eritreans from Denmark, Holland, Germany, US, just Australia, all over. And so they would pick my brain about me being there, because I was an anomaly to them. I was an African-American woman doing research in Eritrea. So they really wanted to know what I felt about Eritrea, their country, because they were very proud.
After they found out that you're African-American.
They're like, what? No.
In the beginning, they will ask you Eritrean, but once they found out.
They thought I was Eritrean, especially when I spoke the language, because I had good pronunciation. And a lot of, Americans, it's very difficult to make the pronunciations in the Union language. So they were really impressed. And so I was just, walking around with a slight chip on my shoulder saying, yeah, thank you, But yeah, so I got a chance to like hang out with them. Sometimes they would have barbecues, or sometimes, they would, we would meet for lunch. Sometimes we would take trips to different places. So, I would hang out with them. And sometimes I would just, take it easy and just, hang out with my research assistant. I mean, she opened up her home to me. She had several, she lived with her family. And so I would go over there sometimes to watch movies, or to, eat, or just, have coffee with them, coffee or tea. Sometimes I would even take naps at her place. so
part of family.
Yeah, so there was always something to do. As Mara, it's a very slow city in terms of people just take it easy there. It's not hectic. It's a exact opposite of like a Lagos, Nigeria. Just two polar opposites. So it was easy for me to just chill, relax, take it all in, people watch, enjoy taking walks on Independence Avenue, take walks in Travolo, and just enjoy the experience.
So where were you staying at when you were?
Let's see, I stayed for a good portion, first half of my stay there, in hotels. I stayed at it wasn't the White Hotel, and from 96 to 98. I stayed at the White Hotel in 1994 during my stay there. But when I was in Eritrea from 96 to 98, I stayed at the, Ambassador Hotel for a while. And then I was like, okay, this is kind of expensive. And then I stayed at the Legesse Hotel for a while. And then after I saw my funds being depleted rapidly, because I had to pay for not only hotel stay, but I had to pay for food, I had to pay for translation services, etc. I was like, oh my gosh, I'm not gonna have much money. And so that's when Don Yamamoto and his family, his wife, opened up their home to me. And they had this big, home in Travolo. And so they had an extra room, and they said, you know what, you can stay here free of charge. And so I was like, yes, it's a godsend. So I stayed there. And
actually, Yamamoto at that time was
he was the charge d'affaires of the American Embassy, because
he's ambassador to Somalia now, or
see, I don't know what he's doing now.
US ambassador.
Well, I think he was in Djibouti for a while.
That's right. Yeah,
he was in Djibouti. And so before I stayed with Don Yamamoto, I was staying with Mary Scholl, and she was the public affairs administrator for the USIS. And so I stayed with her family for a while, and then I moved over to Don Yamamoto and Maggie Yamamoto's place. And then, that's the last place that I lived in Eritrea.
Okay, so you haven't been to Eritrea since then?
Doggone it, no.
Yeah, you're welcome anytime, right?
Yeah, I know.
Yeah, once you're